Namaskar, good afternoon, and welcome to the fourth episode of the fortnightly 1 hour webinar on healthy lifestyle and wellness brought to you by IHL Care in collaboration with Heal Foundation. In the first segment on working women and parenting stress, we have with us Ms. Gagandeep Kaur, who is the Director of Unique Psychological Services, New Delhi, and is a renowned expert in clinical psychology. She's a double gold medalist with MPhil in clinical psychology from IHBAS Delhi University. She has conducted over 600 workshops and is a key resource person with CBSE. She has published more than 17 books. My first question to you, Ms. Gagandeep, is women suffer more stress than men because their response to stress is different. Women have a completely different hormonal system, which as a result causes them to react more emotionally and become more exhausted on an emotional level. Furthermore, they have more stress factors as they have to assume many roles in their day-to-day life. Your comments.
But I think more than looking at the biology, I think God has made men and women very similar in many, many ways. I think a lot of times the stresses that a woman faces comes from a socialization process. I mean, if every family member supports each other, I don't think working would be that difficult. As you rightly mentioned while you were giving a comment that women often have more responsibilities. A lot of times it's not that the woman takes them up. In fact, on the contrary, they are given on to her. So whether you're working or you're not working, taking care of the child, if the child is ill, it is your duty to take an off from the work, not your husband's duty. If there is a puja at home, your work can, suffer, or you can take a back seat. No other person will do that. So I think a lot comes from those assumptions that people carry, and a lot of that negative mindsets that people still have, that a man, if he's washing dishes in the kitchen, he's not a man in the true sense, right? So a lot of these nonsense adds to a work pressure of a woman. But if both men and women and the family members respect each other, their autonomy, and they work in coordination, I don't think, sir, women would end up responding very differently. I think they're as intelligent and as smart as men are.
You mentioned a very crucial point that the women, it is assumed that they have to take a role when the child is ill or they have a puja or this. But then how can a woman get away from all this? Do they tell their husbands, no, it is your responsibility also? But on a practical level, there are a lot of difficulties. So how do they get out of this cycle?
There are two ways, sir. One, both men and women need to work together. So when I say woman, so it is the sasuma, the mother-in-law, the mothers. They need to educate more their sons than a daughter, where some sense of sensitivity has to be built in right in the child-rearing process itself. Secondly, when a bahu walks into the house, the mother-in-law and the mother treats them more or less equally or respects that thing. When it comes to man, as I said, so as a man, we understand we can't change the older generation, but we guys can be more considerate. So sometimes, the man can come forward and say, oh, I don't have much in my workplace, or my boss has given me an off, or, I can work from home today, even though that may not be true, right? So that person can come and take the initiative if you can't change the mindset of family members. So a lot has to do with the setting, the mental understanding between the two partners. After all, when you run a family, it is your understanding that matters more than what the other people say. So I think as a part of parenting and the grooming up process, some sensitivities can be developed in one. Secondly, as adults, as men and women, when you marry together, when you work together, the other partner can also take an initiative without the woman asking for it always. So it has to be more in coordination.
You deal with a lot of counseling also. So do you see a lot of this incompatibility growing up because women are professionally, they've grown up in life, they have their own agenda, not agenda, they have their own thoughts, they're individuals on their own. So we see a lot of, people who don't get, they're incompatible and then they opt for divorce. Is this a growing trend?
I think compatibility issues have been since day one, sir. I think it has nothing to do with the changing times. The only change that has happened is that earlier, if you think of my parents or my grandparents' generation, like I'm 45 plus roughly. So if I talk of years back, my parents or my grandparents' generation, women didn't have much of a choice, sir. They were more dependent on men. So they had to just shut up and adjust at a lot of places. So even when they had difference of opinion, they didn't have financial independence to take a stand or even to assert. And even the part of rearing process, it was cultured into their brains that you're here to serve a man is a god. And I somewhere disagree with this. I think a man is a man, a woman is a woman, as simple as that. Neither a woman is a goddess nor a man is a god. We unnecessarily put few people on a high pedestal. So I think that change in the thinking styles is one difference. Secondly, today, I think certainly there is one more factor to this, which is impatience. Today's generation is very impatient. None of these guys have tolerance for each other, be it a woman or a man. It has nothing to do with the gender per se. I think the capacities to learn to put your needs back, to do something for the other is going down. The tolerance is pathetic. And third factor is the fact that the women now have more independence. They have a head of their own. So a lot of times they don't bear bullshit or nonsense beyond a certain point. And since they know that they are no more dependent, so they don't have to suffer in an abusive relationship throughout their life. I think that is why probably we see a lot of incompatibility happening. Like I'm a single mother. I'm a working woman. And a lot of times, and I used to always earn more than my husband when he was alive. He's no more. But I was often told by my own family members or by other relatives, देखो तुम ज़्यादा कमाओगी ना तो फिर आदमी को complex हो जाएगा. तो तुम थोड़ा back seat रहो. So those mindsets are such that create more of an issue, I think.
Yeah, one way out, sir, which some youngsters are now looking at is to have a sort of a contract where they live together rather than getting married. Is this a way out?
I really don't think so, sir. I think relationships is not just about compatibilities. I think it's more to do with commitment. A lot of times people don't even understand the meaning of relationship. These days, when people choose for live-in, they give you the argument that, let us see are we sexually compatible or not. There's nothing, beyond a certain point, right? Or they think, can we adjust with each other? I think adjustment has to do more with your mindset. So if you enter a relationship thinking what I'm going to get out of it, your guys, both the people are doomed to fall. But if you enter into relationships with the idea of what are you going to contribute to the life of the other? And I am an ardent reader of Gita and Ramayana and, some of these old scriptures. Somewhere I relate a lot to them. Maybe I'm a little old also by now, or I don't know. If you beautifully look at Ramayana, so there's a beautiful conversation between Ram and Sita where they explain the concept of marriage. What is the meaning of those 7 circles that you take? No, jo hum saath fere lete hain. If I ask you today, you will certainly agree. I don't think anybody would even know the basic meaning of these 7 feras. And if you carefully understand the concept of marriage, it's about commitment. It's about contribution that you do towards the other, how you make each other grow. It's not about what you're seeking. It's about giving. So if we go with this mindset, I don't think live-in or hookups or one-night stands or friends with benefits or, there is an N number of endless vocabulary that is being added to it, or trying out or experimenting with sexuality would ever have a place. I think a lot of times it has to do with commitment phobias people carry. Because walking out is so damn easy, no, sir?
Yeah. I think it's not just about sexual compatibility. It's also about whether you can get along with a guy or her together on a different levels. And then, but one thing that I have seen is the live-in relationships do last for quite some time. And they, of course, whether they end up with marriage or not, that's a different thing. But still,
I think it has nothing to do with whether it's a live-in or it's a marriage. I think it has to do with the understanding of people together. As you rightly said, it's about, you don't marry your mirror copies, right? It's really so boring. So when you end up being with someone, there are going to be differences. But how much capacity do we carry to accept the other with the goods along with the flaws? But often what happens, people try to change their partners. They question the flaws. They are not comfortable accepting it, no? That's when the problem happens. It has nothing to do with live-in or marriage per se. I think it's to do with the mental maturities, the right understanding of relationships, and the way people deal with things.
And can you just narrate to us the issues commonly faced by working women, and secondly, on parenting stress?
Parenting, is changing with each changing times, and it has its own challenges. Certainly, with the today's time when both the parents are working, or and we are also, the family size is becoming more nuclear. Pehle dada dadi, everybody used to be there. So if you're busy, somebody else is taking care. There were more capacities of compassion between people. But nobody cares. Yeah, I mean, if you're living in the same house, the person who's living in the next room will be probably some other padosi only with you. I mean, that's the kind of relationship or the distancing that we see in people and the hearts that they carry. So certainly this changing time has made parenting slightly difficult for a number of reasons. One, limited amount of time that we can offer our children, the amount of exposure children have, decreasing support systems that we carry. Also, certainly, parenting calls for a lot of patience. It is something that does demand time. Yeah, no matter there are no shortcuts for few things in life, but we are not having that at all. And a lot of times, the parents or people who become parents, they themselves are not sorted in their own head. So that creates to a lot of issues, I think. So certainly there are concerns that are stemming.
Now, you mentioned that parenting is a big stress. Now, a lot of people are thinking that since it is a stress, getting children into school is a bigger stress, and then counseling them and making them grow is another stress. So they opt for not having children. What's your view on this?
Sir, I didn't say parenting is stress. I like to correct you there. What I meant was,
you didn't say. What I mean is, a lot of youngsters feel, you ask somebody who gets married, hey, bringing up kid is a big headache. Yeah, I don't want all these things.
I think that's what I'm saying. This is the attitude people
carry. Yes.
Want to have. Sir, now when we put a plant of mango tree, when we put a small mango tree, it will only give mangoes when you nurture it for a couple of years. It won't give you mangoes the next day. But the current generation's mindset is, since we are on the technology that, finger click wala system, so we believe, everything we should get right away. But people forget that parenting is also a way to relive your childhood. It is a big de-stressor also. But yes, so if you want to have the benefits, there has to be some degree of responsibility. And a lot of people who say parenting is stress, or, we are better without children, are the ones who only wants the benefit, who don't want to contribute back. So it won't go long. But it is a choice, as I said. Again, it's a choice. I think there is no one rule about it. We cannot say having children or not having children is right or wrong. I would not like to see it this way. But yes, it's a choice, and each choice has a cost to it. So if you choose to have children, and I repeat myself that you decide to give birth to your children don't call up and say, give birth to us. So there is some amount of ownership and responsibility. You like it or you don't, you have to deal with it. Right? If later you want, and there is no guarantee your children will, even ask you when you're old or not. It has to do more with the value systems and how much time you gave them while they're growing up. So they give you when you're old. It depends that way. Those who believe that we don't want to have kids, well, it's a choice. But a lot happens later is, sir, any change in a relationship brings some degree of newness. So when you're living just as two people together, after a certain point, there's a lull that comes in any relationship. So, when you have children and there are different advances that are happening at different ages, so there are new challenges, and that help both the partners grow as individuals too. And it also brings new challenges and strengths both that can either make their bond more stronger or even impair it. So I think it's a choice, but at old age, then these guys have to figure out if they are so compatible with themselves, or they can find their work meaningful or find something else that is more engaging for them, so they don't feel that sense of loneliness beyond a certain point. Because abhi to jawan hai, abhi bahut energy hai, duniya bhar ka kaam hai, we barely have time to sleep also. But at a certain point, when you reach the height of your career, you have earned enough, you're very successful in life, that's when you have everything. Sometimes I've seen some of my clients who chose not to have children feel, okay, now what should I do with this money? What's next? So there is some degree of lull that some of them experience. So either they take care of it by investing in other activities or doing something else or finding some other meaning in other areas in life. I think that's fine. It's a choice.
And in fact, I just want to narrate off in connection with this, that recently, I think a father and mother filed a suit against the children for not having children. Mm-hmm. Because they badly wanted a grandchild, and the son refused to have children, and so they filed a case. Now the case is still going on in the Indian courts, so a suit has been filed. So the things have come to such a stage. Then we go on to other things. Now that schools have reopened, How has the stress level scenario changed? Because 2 years were very, very different, and now you have schools opening, children were stressful, parents were stressful, they were locked up, there was a lot of screen time. So how do you think this transition to a normal life will take? How long will it take? And what are the pitfalls that we have to take care of?
I believe human beings are the most adaptable organisms on earth. So we adapt to all change very, very quickly. So when it was COVID, I think very quickly, at least we Indians figured out how we need to run our lives, and we were able to manage. Now, and any change will call for certain accommodations. When there was COVID and the school was happening online, it had its own set of stressors. So now when it is offline, there are new set of stressors. For example, now if we talk of, children find it a little difficult to get up in the morning because they were never in that routine. So those who would not have a problem. They have sleep issues because earlier they used to be watching Netflix and all that, whatever, online late hours. So those sleep issues are taking a little concern with them because they're learning to readjust. Some children are finding it very difficult to socialize back again because 2.5 years was a good period of time. Specifically, if we talk of the younger children, the KG nursery class, some of them are more open to it, but I think the people who suffered, if we talk of schooling and the children who suffered the most were the ones who had learning disabilities or autistic spectrum disorders or other disabilities, because for them, the life took a very different turn altogether. A lot of therapies ended up, a lot of regression is seen. They are finding it very difficult to rewrite because for 2 years, copies were never made. Reading and spellings have gone out of the toss. So I think there are new changes only or reaccommodations that people will have to make. I don't think it will take very long. I think adaptation to change depends upon how willing you are to accept this new change as the reality. So the day the parents, the schools, and the children begin to accept it and gradually they make accommodations, I think it will fall in its place. And schools are doing it. Schools are pretty aware of it. Like they're not giving unnecessary homeworks. They're giving enough liberties. The written work is not complete on time. I think they are doing their relaxations, and parents also need to now pull up their socks. Like some of the parents, if I won't quote one of my patients, but would not name them. Their child had learning disability, and since COVID happened, they discontinued the classes, even when online it was possible, or when we had opened a clinic after a certain while. They said, "Ma'am, exam cheating देके बच्चे दे रहे हैं, क्या करना है, पास हो जाएंगे, 2 साल और रह गए, देखा जाएगा." So that mindset has also added it more difficult for children because the gap has increased.
Okay.
So I think this is how I like to put it.
Now, how stressful is it for pregnant working women? And what are the suggestions that you have, especially if people come to your clinic and they have such issues? How do you tackle it?
I would say pregnancy is one of the beautiful experiences you guys can have. And it has nothing to do with stress, guys. It is something to be enjoyed. It gives you a chance to create someone. And at that point, if every woman takes better care of their mental health, you are actually be able to give birth to someone who will have a better emotional understanding. Work may not be stressful, sir, always. It could be actually a respite. Agar ghar mein hi bahut kalesh ho raha hai, the work can be a very good respite for a pregnant woman. Should be very happy going out. Chalo yaar, kach se to bache. So it is not always stressful. But yes, if you feel, and also it is known, research says that if a pregnant woman is more active during her pregnancy, doing any intellectual jobs or any creative jobs, the brain differentiation in the womb is higher. So children are born with better IQs. So I think I would always recommend people work. Like I was working till the last minute of my pregnancy. I saw my last client and then I admitted myself to the hospital. Like I don't have much of a family support. My in-laws and my parents are very far off. And so I had to do on my own. So I myself got myself admitted in a hospital saying I'm having labor. And I did it all on my own. And that's all right, I think. And I was working throughout. I think it was a blessing only. But yes, if you feel that there is a lot of stress happening around, then it would be detrimental to your kid. Take out some breathing zones. Take some time, few holidays from work. People do understand. If they don't, to hell with it, because work will always come back to you. You also need to see, if not your family, maybe some friends or other people who can look out to, who can be a source of support. And mentally, see, stress is here. And that is why we say it is subjective. So if you develop a resilient attitude, if you, instead of cribbing, figure out solutions. See, we feel more stressful because we crib more. We continue to say, ye nahi ho raha, wo nahi ho raha, ye bekar hai, wo bekar hai. But the moment, instead of cribbing, you focus more on, all right, life is not that great. There are challenges. What do I do? So if you shift to solutions, your stresses are going to be slightly lower. And we all have our own different, people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different family setups will have a different set of stressors. Pregnancy by itself is not stressful. It carries its own share of emotional, hormonal changes and other things. But it's again the way you look at things. It's the attitude that you carry. So if you can fix your attitude, look for a more solution-focused approach, arrange support wherever required. And if it's a choice that you made, then let's celebrate it. I think we can make it more easier for us.
I can make out from you that you're extremely strong and focused. So among the 16 books that you wrote, which is the most popular one?
One is Sexuality Education, which is very, very popular. That is about how right from the early age, we could help children not be victims of sexual abuse and they could be made more independent, is one book that is there. Otherwise, they're more psychology-oriented books.
And menopause throws up different challenge. There are episodes of depression, mood swings, etc. What are the challenges, especially for a working woman?
I think I sometimes wonder when you keep adding working woman to it.
No, the session. We don't have a session on non-working women.
Okay. All right. See, menopause is menopause, yeah. Whether you're working or you're not working, you will go through the same hormonal changes, right? So they would be hot flashes, heat flashes, cold flashes that may happen. Mood swings would be there. Yeah. I think it has nothing to do with work per se. That is why I asked that across. But yes, see, when you can take a day off and you're not working and there are no much commitments and you're not feeling very, in the right space, it gives you enough space to work at yourself. But when you have a lot of work pressure, and there are some commitments that you have to live up to and you have menopausal issues, I think it makes slightly more difficult. I think work has nothing to do with this. You need to just take care of your, all that you need to do in your menopause at that point is, one, accept this change. Ye aayega. The more resistance you show, the more difficult it's going to be. Second, whatever heat flushes are there or the low moods are there, go seek a doctor. No, there is help available. Why are we sitting and cribbing? Go seek out. It's just a change in your body. So seek help for it. That is available. Third, try and remind yourself and stay as positive and as meaningfully or constructively occupied that you are, what we say to even a depressive client. Then instead of sulking or sitting alone, distract your head. Put into either watch something that makes you feel better or speak out to people, share your emotions out. It is very, very helpful. I think that's what would take care of. And it's a phase. जब अच्छा वक्त नहीं रहता है सर तो बुरा भी नहीं रहता है ना तो फिर menopause वाला phase भी बुरा नहीं है वो एक phase है आपकी life का it only I would rather when I get menopause I'm going to see it myself okay I'm getting few years more wiser God gave me a chance to experience this thing also am I alive I'll be more grateful for that.
And speaking of that attitude, do you see more patients with postpartum depression?
Yes, I do.
In fact, in Karnataka, a prominent politician's daughter, niece committed suicide because of that. So do you see and how do you counsel them?
So postpartum depression is a genuine psychiatric concern. It's like when you have fever or you have any cold or any other concern, right? The same way, so when a mother gives birth to a child, there are some hormonal changes that takes place inside her. That hormonal imbalance can lead to a sense of depression. And postpartum depression is an absolute reality. All you need is just go to a psychiatrist, take some antidepressant pills, and some counseling that will help you put you back on track, and that's all. Sir, are you still there? I think there is some problem with the connection. So am I audible to you?
Yeah, so you are audible to us.
Yeah, I think his screen has frozen.
Yes, some technical issue.
So that's what I mean. So postpartum depression is a proper clinical depression. It's a proper disorder. And since giving birth to a child is a complicated process and a lot happens inside a woman's body, so kuch hormones ka imbalance hota hai, nothing to worry. Just go to a psychiatrist, take some pills, and also go to a clinical psychologist. Like I am a clinical psychologist and I'm RCI registered one. So just take some therapies and you're fine. That's it.
But do you think that, you mentioned about youth, and when we talk about youth, you did share that, nowadays the attitude is a major concern.
Yes.
So, do you think that there is a rise in, this sort of this confusion of not having kids or something? Or do you think that this is just not a true fact?
No, it is a true fact. See, our lives are very different. If you look at the corporate world that these youth are involved in, they don't have time to sleep for themselves. Yeah, they don't have time for themselves, not even for their partners. Then sometimes they question that how can we even think of raising a kid? Can be a valid question at certain points. Our corporate lifestyles have made it so different. It is we basically. Let's not blame anyone. We have chosen certain lifestyles, and corporate world का ऐसे हमसे ही तो बनता है ना. So sometimes some of the concerns are genuine. As I said, so I will not like to brand it in any way as in terms of morally right or wrong. I mean, I think we all need to have our own sense of right or wrong.
But then, yes, there is a rise. If I have to,
yes, there is a rise. I'm not denying that. I'm already telling you there is a reason also behind that rise, Chavi.
Thank you. So Shankar sir has joined. He'll take over from here.
Yes,
yeah. I'm sorry, my internet suddenly went off and I had a very, very stressful episode of trying to get it back. But thankfully, I heard you and said this is just a phase which you have to go through. So I said, okay, calm down, and the internet will come back. And
great, you're stressed for a very brief period of time.
yeah. No. Sometimes even the brief stress can cause a problem. Then I heard you saying that this is just a phase of life. So there is no issue. Now, I just go on to another question. Do women actually have a problem approaching psychiatrists or psychologists, taking psychological support from system, or there's a taboo still? Do people approach you very freely, or?
It is the other way around. A lot of times women become the scapegoat. Kuch bhi, if there's any problem in the family, so they'll say, oh, go get her checked. There's something wrong with her. If there's a relationship problem in a marriage, often a man would say, oh, there's something wrong in my wife, she's nagging. He would fail to see that there's something that you're also contributing to the marriage, right? So I don't think it is to do with that sense of a taboo that women don't come. But in general, there is a change that we see. Prior to the earlier generations, the current generation is the more smarter one. They're more open about mental health. They're more willing to come for therapies. They're more willing to seek help. On the contrary, they would not want to take medication. So the attitude towards seeking help in terms of counseling or therapies is far more better. But a lot of times, since I work with the Dalits also, Dalit in the sense, I mean the community, which is rejected by a larger sector of the society. So if I talk of that particular community, a women are often seen as a scapegoat. कुछ भी हो रहा है, ये सब इसकी गलती है. तो इसको भेजो, इसका दिमाग खराब है, इसकी काउंसलिंग कराओ, ये इसको पागल हो गई है. That's the words that they often use there. So women are used both ways, sir.
Okay, and do women apart from all that, there is a lot of increase in domestic violence, especially during the COVID period. There are reports of domestic violence, and people coming in. So what do you have to say about that?
I think domestic violence is happening both ways. It's not just that a man hits up a woman. These days, women also give back to men. It's both ways. Women talk more easily about it. Men find it difficult to talk about it because, again, it's that male ego that stops them from admitting it to at many places. I think domestic violence instances did increase too much stress. Capacities were very limited. Then we guys prior to COVID had gone into that culture where we go out, we see each other for only 2 hours. Now we have to see each other for 24/7. So that itself became very taxing. Then the places that we live in, if we talk of Delhi, like all of us are not very blessed. A lot of people may not be blessed like you and I, where we have good amount of rooms to ourselves or a good amount of personal space. A lot of people have to, live in that same confined boundaries. Ab wahi rehna hai. And everybody's working from home also. There are a number of things that are happening together. So I think that all led to immense amount of stress. And then the fear, who's going to carry COVID? Will I die the next moment? What is happening? No clarity about medical services. And so many, doubts and confusions. I think that all increase the stress. और फिर जब हम इंसान की फितरत है, जब stress नहीं handle होता है, we lash out onto the others. I think that could be one of the reasons, or few reasons behind recent domestic violence. I can't hear you, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Recently, I found a very strange report where it said that, women don't mind being beaten up by husbands. There was a survey which was held, I think, in the South, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, and said beating up of women by husbands is a natural phenomenon, so they don't mind it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say about that?
I don't know which women are these.
It is actually
also.
It is a whopping 70%, women.
See, that's what See, that's what I'm saying, sir. If it is a finding, then I think it needs to change. And I think it has any amount of hitting by anybody. It's not about a man beating a woman. It's also about a woman beating a man, both ways. There is no point of abusing anyone. So the moment you raise your hands or you abuse your partner, you reduce your partner to a commodity in a relationship. I think I have an objection to that. And when you say that it is okay to be hit, makes that partner who says it's okay to accept abuse, which itself is, I think, a crime. You need to take a stand, and that means that probably you don't even respect your own self. I mean, I myself was not into a very nice marriage. My husband was not a nice man. He was infidel. He had many other issues outside. And I think I paid a cost for it because I was one of those women who said, I'm sorry. The moment I realized, I mean, for a lot of years, I didn't know because I was trusting him too much. But when I ended up realizing, so he is not that person, I did bring it to my family and to my in-laws. And like any other family members, they were like, kar lo adjust, aadmi ki to hote hi hain types, kahan jayega, ghar hi to aayega. I said, I'm sorry, it's not about him. It's about, can I look at my own self in the mirror? If I don't respect a man, there is no point being with that man. How can I love that man? I think it's to do with the attitudes again. And yes, you have to pay a cost for it. Like, I'm a single mother. I'm running the entire family, my work, my business, my son, everything by myself. And it is not easy. I will not deny that. And yet a lot number of people will say any nasty statements that they have to for any damn thing. I mean, people are people, right? This showed me a different phase of life altogether. But that's what I'm saying. So it is, again, your choice. So the moment you say that it is okay to be beaten means you're somewhere indicating that I'm helpless. You're somewhere indicating, well, I deserve this secondary treatment. Somewhere you don't choose to respect yourself, or maybe your fears or insecurities take a toll on you. So if that's the report, I think then the governments or people need to do something to help people learn to respect themselves. And what are the example are they setting for their children? Don't you think this entire cycle will go on? If today I had accepted this nonsense of my husband, I think my son would have been walking on his path. How fair is that?
Yes.
So I would not want to take that.
I would like to ask you a very personal question, in the sense that you said that you had a very tough time, getting out of the marriage and other things and all. So as a single mother and growing post your, separation, what are the difficulties that you had, if you could narrate, and how did you overcome it? Because this would be an example for others also, because we have a lot of single mothers who are having a tough time.
The major difficulty that I had was facing my own self and making my mind up. That was the biggest difficulty that I had. Because a lot of times none of us, it's again nothing to do with gender, I believe. I think it's to do with anybody who believes in the concept of family. Like I believe in the concept of relationships and family. So nobody would want their marriage to break, no matter what. So I think the first point or the biggest challenge in my life was to come to an understanding. Being a psychologist, I am a qualified psychologist. I'm a double gold medalist with presidential gold medal. I'm in a fairly well-read, well-known kind of a person in that sense in my fraternity. I think the biggest challenge for me was to come to an understanding that this marriage is over. Because I believe marriages are neither made nor are broken in courts or on paper. I think, and in the family. So I was a very family person, and I'm still a family-oriented person. I think that doesn't change anything for that matter. So it was such a big toll for me that I had developed ulcers. So the second thing was to stand on your feet emotionally. See, we all can earn, we all can work. Finance is never a problem. If you are educated enough, एक रिक्शे वाला भी एक बर्तन धोने वाली भी औरत 2 रुपए मतलब 2 वक्त की रोटी कमा ही लेती है. So it was the second challenge was to be emotionally self-reliant. Not to fall onto the others, because कोई अगर आपके आंसू पहुंचता है तो उसकी कीमत भी मांगता है सर्व आपसे. So you need to be very careful of that. Third challenge was, which is a practical challenge. You have 24 hours only in a day, right? You have the same human body that does tire. But running everything, managing everything right from your child, and parenting is a full-time job. And a career that I'm into, which is again psychology, which is not easy. It does talk for a lot of mental strength and emotional stability. You can't bring your relationship issues in your, work at the same point. So drawing that balance was another challenge. I think rest, the day you make up your mind, And I would rather see this as a blessing in my life, because another challenge was the question, why me? Why did this happen to me when I was the most committed wife, or there was nothing wrong in our whatever, forget all that. Then why me? And I think that's what brought me to Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata and Ramayana, because that's when I started to understand what is the meaning of life. And I believe it was a blessing in disguise for me. That's how I see it. I find myself more peaceful and more sorted now.
I just wanted to ask you, you said post your life when you separated and when you had problems, you developed ulcers, you had stressful situations. How long did you take to come back to normalcy, and how did your son take it?
It took me at least 6 months to 8 months minimum. It did take me that much long. I didn't think it'll take me that long, but yes, it took me 6 to 8 months long, thinking, that I'm a psychologist, I would heal better. But I think beyond a psychologist, you're an ordinary human being too. No matter what you do, certain things have their own process. So it did take me 6 to 8 months that were very pathetic. But then things began to fall in place. My son was the one who caught him. So I think I didn't have to say anything. He was sensible enough. He himself, it was tough for him. But I think by God's grace, he's a very matured or a sensible boy. And I never I made it a point that whatever issues he and I have shouldn't come onto my child. He needs to develop his own sense of right or wrong. It'll be very unfair as a partner, no matter how much I may not like my husband anymore. If I talk ill about him to my son, I'm causing more damage to my son. We have lived our lives. So I would not do that. So I've tried to create as normal livelihood that I can give to my child. But obviously there is some taint that does happen. But we all can change all those things for a good too. So my son has to deal with his own concerns, but I think he's growing well and matured. So, it did take a lot.
And what is one of the biggest messages that you want to give for single mothers? What should they be looking out at? How to stand on their own feet? What is the message? Because you're an example yourself. So what is the example? But there are not all the people are as strong as you. There are many vulnerable people also. So what is the message that you want to give to this section of the society?
I don't know whether I'm strong or not. I would rather see I didn't have a choice. I either had a choice to live the same life that 80-90% of people live that, where they die every single moment, or I had the choice to live a life of dignity. I think I chose the second one, which turned out to be a little tougher, but I'm more happier about it. The only message I can give is 1, respect yourself. That is the first foremost thing. Respect the other people too. 3rd, who says we are weak? Yeah, whether it's a man or woman, again, I'm not going by gender here. I'm going by the person here. Nobody is weak here. Every strength lies within you. All that you need to do is take all your fears, make them sit in front of you on the chair, just opposite you. Have a chat with them. Tell them, what is the fear all about? The day you choose to face your fears, the day you make up your mind that this is what I choose to do, and you're willing to pay for the consequences for the same, I think you can live a far more peaceful and a more happier life. Things begin to fall in its own way. I think they fall in place, sir, automatically. I think that's
lovely. I think it is lovely having you. In fact, I had to extend your session by another 10 minutes, which I don't know whether you noticed.
I didn't notice. So,
yeah, it was so engrossing that we had to extend the session. It was very wonderful. And I think you have conveyed quite a lot of strong messages to women. And the underlying factor is everything is in your head. Your attitude matters. I think that's the bottom line. Thank you very much, Ms. Kaur, for having you with us. And it was
pleasure.
Wonderful hosting. Thank you.
My pleasure, sir.
Let me remind our viewers that we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Let me remind our viewers that we are live on Facebook and YouTube, and we enter into the next session, which is on men versus women, the story of an imbalanced plate. I think that's a very interesting session. And we have with us Ms. Nazneen Hussain, who is a senior dietitian in Mumbai and runs Freedom, a beginning to a healthy you, a lifestyle management center that includes holistic mind, body, and soul approach in treating lifestyle ailments. Nazneen believes that you are you, and thus every program is personalized. Wonderful having you again, Ms. Nazneen. And apart from having you in this particular session, the topic is also equally interesting in the sense that we are not going to nutrition and other things, but a recent survey that came out which threw up this particular topic. Now, recent reports say that more people are eating non-vegetarian food than ever before, and the proportion of Indian men who do so has gone up sharply in 6 years between 2015 and 16 and 2019-21, shows the National Family Health Survey. What are the reasons why this sharp jump? It's quite a substantial jump.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much, Mr. Shankar, for having me here. As always, it's a pleasure. And like you rightly said, this topic is very, very interesting. And, over the last few years, we've been talking about the protein gap in the Indian diet. Yeah. And a lot of awareness actually was made even by health professionals like us to help people to spike up their protein content. Interestingly, this report, actually says that there are more people now eating the meat. And, to my mind, that may be because of easy availability. And in the last 2 years also during the pandemic, we've seen a whole lot of packaged food, especially, the cured meats, the packaged meats. And that, to my mind, as a nutritionist, is also an area of big concern. Because one is just to increase the non-vegetarian foods, which could be, sources of protein. However, when you look at packaged meat and, meat overall, which people are eating in terms of ordering in, those kind of foods would be a matter of challenge. And so, yes, definitely, more cognizance needs to be taken. So whilst on one hand, we continuously keep talking about the protein gap, on the other hand, choosing the right protein also, I think, is an important point of discussion in today's world. Yeah.
So speaking of protein intake, the report also says that shows that there is an imbalance in the plate, with more men consuming non-vegetarian food than women, who have to make do with white.
Yeah.
So what does this imply? Are women getting less protein intake?
Yes, actually, we interestingly also running this campaign called Protein Has No Gender. Okay. Yes. So literally, it means that, when normally in an Indian household, first the women serve the elders, then they serve the children, then the husbands or the men of the house. And so even if there is non-veg which is being cooked, okay, what she has left is all the meat pieces or the chicken or the fish or whatever is actually served to the rest of the family. So she's ineffectively only eating the leftover or very, very little or skim parts of that food. So I think that is got to do more with tradition and, the way us as Indians eat and the role of women and, serving in their families. I think largely because of that. Another reason actually, which to my mind comes when I read this report, is that today the women's health scenario is largely changing. And there is a lot of hormonal imbalance, especially in women. And we see a lot of young girls with PCOS, cases of infertility increasing, early menopause. And so a lot of women today consciously also have made the shift towards plant-based diets. So probably that may also be one of the reasons why we are seeing. So one is traditional eating for sure, and that largely happens. But the second one is also the changing hormonal scenario. So both of these could be responsible.
Okay. There is also another interesting fact. The data shows that the proportion of men with aged 15 to 49 years who have never consumed non-vegetarian food stood at 16.6% in 2019 to 21. Now, when you look at the past, that is a 5 percentage point drop from 21.6% reported in the previous record survey, now conducted in 2015-16. So what do you make of this data?
So today, I think the bigger thing is social media availability. Today, meat or chicken or fish was never so available. Today, we have so many apps which just keep flashing on our mobile saying that, okay, it gets delivered. You don't need to go to the market. You also get these pre-cooked meats. Today you get marinated meats. All that you have to do is just cook in your house. So even if you are a Jain vegetarian, you don't really have to do too much. If you don't have to bring the meat and clean it. It's all done. It's easy for you. So the intake factor increases. So earlier, access was a challenge. Today, I think access is not so much of a challenge. And I think that may be one of the reasons why the intake has actually jumped up. In fact, in the study, it also shows some Jain population, and the numbers have gone up. Earlier, the Jain population almost didn't have any reported numbers.
Yeah, but this particular report shows that there is an increase in vegetarianism also in certain groups.
Yes.
Compared to the last time.
Yes.
So is that to do with social media, or is it what is the reason?
So if you, Mr. Shankar, if you look at some of the recent trends, okay, one is social media, but the two is there's a lot of impact on, healthy eating, high antioxidants, plant-based diets. And these are equally strong messages which are also, going. And today, if you look at millennials and you look at the Gen Z population, a lot of them, majority, are also fitness freaks and they are health enthusiasts. So they definitely have spiked up their content of fruits and vegetables and plant-based foods, including pulses, etc. So whilst there is one end of the spectrum which is moving extremely towards the healthier end, there is another end which is moving towards the unhealthy food. So especially in an urban population, you see both of them. Like there are, even in our clinics, interestingly, like we'd have some 30-year-old who is so particular and he wants to follow the diet to the T, and he's moved towards sustainability and he eats millets and pulses and vegetables and fruits. The other one is like, chhod do, I'm Netflix guy. I like to eat my fries and I like to eat my chicken the way it is. It has to be fried. I like to eat my meat burger. So both of them coexist together.
Yeah, but surprisingly, Nasreen, what has happened is, though the previous question was on men, but when you come to women, the dip is just 0.3%. Of people not doing. So how come there is this particular gender skew that men are increasingly becoming vegetarians and women continue to be where they are in 2015 and 16?
So that, I think, any which ways the consumption was lower, and so not much has changed. And changing hormonal scenario actually, pretty major health scenario, especially for women. This whole advent of PCOS, weight gain, early menstruation has become a huge challenge. And just purely because weight gain happens much earlier, there are cases of infertility. So a lot of them see nutritionists, see doctors, see family healthcare physicians, and the only two words given is reduce things which are causing inflammation, and of which meat tops the list.
And the survey also showed that there is a lot of increase in people who take egg compared to fish and chicken. So is that a healthy sign?
So this is an interesting one actually, because sometime back, when we started our dietetic practice, and then, anybody who had an elevated cholesterol level, we would never give them an egg yolk. We would say that every egg yolk is almost around 300 milligrams of cholesterol. So you need to restrict it. However, recent, research studies also show that one whole egg, including the egg yolk, is all right. For those who are like, more fitness enthusiasts, then you eat your one egg yolk and you can increase around 2 or 3 egg whites just to get that, all 9 essential amino acids coming in from your egg protein. And also the National Egg Commission also did a lot of work around building awareness, especially even in rural India, on consumption of egg as a whole protein. And, especially more so because the milk, a lot of people are having challenges with, whether the cow is given hormones and oxytocin and things like that. So egg seem to be like a more safer option, more cheaper option. So one egg is around 6 to 7 rupees, and it still delivers that, good 6 to 7 grams of protein, which, one would otherwise struggle. In fact, a lot of, the national mission, the foods at ICDS, or, many of the meals which are given, especially to pregnant women, also include 1 or 2 eggs. So in that way, by default, egg actually features in, and it's a high protein, cheap form of protein food. So it does go high.
Yeah, Ms. Nasin, I would like to hear from you again regarding this egg yolk. Is it safe to take? Because people say that's dietary cholesterol, and the oil-based cholesterol is different, and so it's safe to take that. Is it safe to take an egg with the yolk?
So I would say treat every person individually. If somebody has a soaring high cholesterol, okay, and you are hypercholesteremic, then restrict it to maybe 3 egg yolks in a week. So you could eat egg whites for the proteins, but restrict it to 3 egg yolks. If your cholesterol levels are normal, then you can eat the whole egg with the yolk. And also the other side of the story, Mr. Shankar, is that we are a very carb eating nation. Right? So typically at breakfast, idli, upma, poha, paratha, flakes with milk is something which we've been eating over the years. So a lot of nutritionists today, especially if somebody eats an egg, say that, okay, you don't give up the traditional eating pattern. If you're eating a poha or upma, eat a small bowl, but include 1 egg. Yeah. So in that way, what it does is the protein from the egg and the fat from the egg blunts the sugar levels, and so the entire sugar spike which happens doesn't go on. And also that it helps me in controlling my blood sugar level. Studies also show that if you're eating an egg for breakfast, it can satiate you much more than any other food, almost up to 36 hours. Right? So overall in the entire day, when I eat my calories, hum thoda kam khayenge, which overall also helps me in weight management. So that is why egg is a very popular, breakfast food today. A lot of people also use it for dinner, because many people eat carb restricted dinners. So in that they would use an egg omelette or an egg salad or any preparations out of egg.
Now you said the white of the egg gives you the protein. So what does the yellow of the egg give you?
So the yellow of the egg also is the fat. It also gives you a lot of biotin. And especially post-COVID, like people are losing a lot of hair, and there is hair fall. Also, the yellow of the protein has the non-heme iron. Okay, so when you eat an egg with a fruit or like an orange, what it does is the vitamin C from the orange helps the non-heme iron also to be available. And also 50% of Indians are also anemic. So here the egg is doing a dual purpose of building the protein, building the biotin, building the calcium, and increasing the hemoglobin. So, it's a very sustainable food there.
And this particular fact of the survey will make you very happy, Nasin, is that the survey also showed that there is a sharp decrease in men and women taking edited drinks.
Yes.
So what's your take on that?
I think thankfully people are understanding this whole process, and today I think the food industry by itself also has come up with a lot of innovations in alternative dairy, in looking at plant-based milk, looking at high protein milks. So I think all of those innovations have helped to remove the dependence on aerated beverages. And that wow factor which was there earlier, people are slowly realizing that it is not such a beneficial food, and there are a lot more available there just to kind of, satiate you and give you that same effect rather than just using something which was empty calories. And
so this aspect, yeah, this aspect of the data, of course, will make you happy, but the next aspect will make us a bit worried, because there is a sharp increase in people who take fried foods. It's almost 98.4%. Of course, Indians are known for frying everything, including themselves. But then you see how exactly, not themselves, actually, they fry others. So this fried food, how to overcome this?
Yes, that is not such a great idea, because, when we're talking about frying, okay, one definitely, and 98% is a huge number. I mean, it's not like, something which we can ignore. And as health messaging, I think we need to tell people that differentiate between sometimes foods and everyday foods. Okay, if you eat fried foods once in a while, it is fine. But if you eat it every day, there is a huge challenge. Plus, frying is the amount of oil which you're using is definitely high. So whether you're eating a puri or a samosa or a fried chicken, each of them, the amount of oil is extremely high. Plus, the oil which is used when you are frying, when you're doing the process of frying, you're reusing the same oil again and again. So that itself also increases a lot of, chances of, the TPC count increasing, and it may be cancer causing. Especially a lot of people pick up fried foods from street foods, or, even at home level, they keep reusing the oil after the smoking point has come. So all of these are very dangerous practices. Also, today we talk very strongly about the dietary AGE, the advanced glycated end products. So anything which uses dry heat and frying, which means that you have the fat and the protein have reacted at that level, and at the end of it, it's all causing a lot of inflammation in your body. So at every level, it's not only the calories increasing, but also the damage and the kind of inflammation it creates is very, very high. So
as an alternate, as an alternative to frying, is air frying a substitute?
That's a tricky question, actually. Yeah, because whilst it would definitely help us to reduce the calories from the oil. Okay, so that's a given, that's a no-brainer. But like I was explaining the dietary AGE factor, that air frying again is a dry heat method, right? And so whenever you're using dry heat, extreme high temperature, it will damage. Yeah, so it will cause glycation end products, which can cause a lot of health concerns. So in terms of managing calories, yes, it can be good. To continue the same story, even, in the first, going back to the first question of the meat. So people say, okay, we didn't eat fried meat, we ate grilled meat, or we ate a barbecue, or we ate sheep or something like that. But all of these, again, barbecuing or dry heat also causes a lot of dietary AGE. So they are all methods, which may use less oil, but again, not the most healthiest one.
And apart from all this, what happens is, you said that you cannot reuse oil.
Yes.
But traditionally in our homes we use. How many times can we use? You fry once, you can use it the second time or third time when you discard the oil?
The maximum amount of oil, number of times you can use it is not more than 3 times. Okay, so if you remember the movie Mission Mangal, okay, where Vidya Balan is frying the puris, and she says that, okay, control the temperature. Okay, so when the oil is hot, and then whatever the puri or the samosa, whatever you put in, it fries by itself. So don't allow the oil to smoke up. When the oil starts smoking up, that is where the TPC count increases. So one is that, and when we use oil in a kadai, don't keep reusing the oil more than 3 times. The first time you use it, the puri or the samosa looks perfectly golden and normal. Second time, you see a little black dots around it. Third time, there are more. And at the end of the karai, when you remove all the oil, you'll see this oil actually thickened and black. Now, don't be greedy to use that oil. Okay. And many vendors, even at household level, what we do is we take fresh oil and we add it into the same oil. Okay. So that practice is a completely wrong practice. That leftover oil, you just need to discard it. Not use it in any other vegetable, not use it for binding the dough, but just let it go, and we use fresh oil, that is fine.
One final question to you, if I sign off, is in your practice, this is nothing to do with data, but do you see increasingly people becoming vegetarian or non-vegetarian? Because sometimes when prices of vegetables go up, there is an increase in non-vegetarian food. So it is just a hunch. I'm just asking you, what is your guess?
Yes, there is, because these days the cost of, buying a paneer is equivalent to buying chicken. Yeah, and so people are, both the side of the fence, they kind of, there are these very thin lines which people cross sometimes seasonally, sometimes, just occasionally, but people do cross these. And so, they swindle from one side to another. It's like almost like a zigzag. And then like sometimes they say, okay, now I'm veg. Then they say, okay, ma'am, now you can give us let's put the non-veg back. I'm missing it. So there are still a lot of people on that fence. There are some who have purely taken up this whole plant-based eating and they've gone vegan and they're looking for substitute meats and alternative meats which are coming in. Some of them, the foodie population is a foodie population. Nothing can be done about it. They're like, okay, give us an hour of extra workout, but we will eat what we have to eat. So I think food is a very personal choice. And so even whilst we counsel, okay, we have to give them like a lot of options in that category. Only then it makes sense. Otherwise, compliance for them on these diets becomes very difficult.
Yeah, in Karnataka, there is a saying, always when you go anywhere, whether it is in a bus or whether it is in a hotel, they say, "Solpa adjust madi." We have to make a little bit of adjustment. I think Indians are more known for these adjustments. And It was wonderful having you with us, Nazneen. We have run out of time. I think you gave us a lot of knowledge, especially the data that had come out, which was quite surprising for many. Thank you very much. And
thank you so much.
The next time.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. So we come to the end of the show and we'll have next episode a fortnight later. Thank you and signing off. Goodbye.